First of the Fourth Estate Award dinners, and Walter Cronkite was to be honored that evening.
And I was making my speech from the throne, as it were.
I'm proud of those who have the courage to reject the favors of the newsmakers, who do not become part of the establishment, preserve access to the inner circle without becoming members of it.
Somewhere along the way, a little note was handed up to me on a paper napkin, scribbled on there, saying there'd been a call to the club from the Special Prosecutor's Office, Archibald Cox.
And then I saw messages being passed and others leaving, and they were obviously something about my speech had disturbed them.
I surely knew that something was happening with Watergate.
Finally, some kind soul got up and said, "You may not know what's happened because you're up there at your podium, but the President Nixon, has just fired Archibald Cox, a special counsel who was looking into and supposed to be investigating the Watergate affair." And they called it later the Saturday Night Massacre.
It was a big story, breaking right in the middle of my momentous occasion at the press club.
So my great speech from the throne sort of petered out.
I am overwhelmed to be placed on a pedestal beside such greats of this business as David Brinkley and Art Buchwald and Helen Thomas and Herb Block and Simeon Booker and Scotty Reston and the rest. It's immensely flattering.
Congratulations, Mary. You've come a long way. All the way from the balcony to the head table.
When I was writing 4 columns a week, at least 3 were against the Vietnam War all those years. And that war went on. And after Richard Nixon came to power, having promised to end the war, it went on for 4.5 years more, while, I might add, many members of the Fourth Estate, so bedazzled by Henry Kissinger, so overcome that he returned their telephone calls, just didn't seem to notice that the bombs were still falling and people were still dying.
Took me a long while to learn that they play a game out there of seeing who can write in the cleverest insult. And a lot of years ago, I gave it to a woman in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who was angry about a column I'd written about Ronald Reagan. And she said, "Dear Mr. Rowan, life for you must be a terrible burden, being black and stupid at the same time." Well, I answered, as I do all of my reasonable mail. I said, "Dear madam, life for you can't possibly be so great a burden, since you obviously have only half my problem."
An interview with Larry Spivak and Tom Brokaw. Now, a lot of the video was distorted. So we found the Brokaw responses. I had to take the transcript of Spivak and I re-asked the questions, if that's okay. I'd like to roll it now. Here it is.
Do you actually think in the next 15 or 20 years you could become the anchor of nightly news?
I am someone who, along with Meredith Brokaw, grew up in the heartland in South Dakota. I understand the issues and the complexities facing people's lives. I know the native peoples of this country, and let's be honest, the generation that I appeal to is old, in many cases incontinent, but it is a great generation. In fact, it is, I think, the greatest generation of our time.
We have given this award, among others, to Walter Cronkite, Eric Sevareid, Carl Rowan, Mike Royko, and a select list of men and women who have contributed so much to journalism that they are the pinnacle and ideal of our profession. Tonight, you join them on that list for all time.
I like to think that is what Mr. Jefferson had in mind when he wrote, "Our citizens may be deceived for a while and have been deceived, but as long as the presses can be protected, we may trust them for light."
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 2023 Fourth Estate Gala at the National Press Club, the world's leading organization for journalists. I'm Eileen O'Reilly, the 116th president of the National Press Club and the managing editor of Standards and Training at Axios. Wasn't that video amazing? It's always wonderful to see and hear from some of journalism's legends who have taken this very same stage over the past 50 years of the club's Fourth Estate Award. That clip, by the way, was from the club's 2008 Centennial documentary, produced by Jerry and Adam Krell and Meyer Odes. As we start our program, please feel free to begin indulging in your salads. We're all family here, so. When the club honored Walter Cronkite with its first Fourth Estate Award in 1973, we began the important tradition of celebrating journalism excellence that we continue now. Tonight, we recognize the incredible achievements of 5 journalists. We will celebrate the person receiving the Fourth Estate Award, who has an incredible body of work and a pioneering attitude that is helping break barriers and elevate journalism. This is the highest award the National Press Club gives. With our Aubuchon Awards, we will recognize 3 journalists and their courageous efforts over the past year, despite facing terribly concerning press freedom barriers. And with the Neil and Susan Sheehan Award for Investigative Journalism, we will honor an outstanding investigative journalist whose work centering diverse and underrepresented communities in her reporting has shined light on systemic barriers to their basic needs. Now, we all know this has been an incredibly tough year for journalists in particular, with extraordinary challenges in serving our communities. Let this also be a night in which we honor all of our colleagues in the field and the profession of journalism itself. Whether covering 2 wars overseas, the Congress and the White House, the lingering pandemic, the election cycle, City Hall, school boards, everything. The work of our colleagues this year has reminded Americans and others around the world of the vital role of the press in democracy. So to those journalists with us tonight, and to those who are working right now on their job, thank you. We are so honored tonight to be joined by our Fourth Estate honoree, Kristen Welker, and her NBC News colleagues. We look forward to hearing from her a little later tonight. She was following some of the finest journalists of the past century, half-century, including Lester Holt, Gwen Ifill, Marty Barron, Dean Baquet, Christiane Amanpour, and our 2013 honoree, Andrea Mitchell, who will be here with us tonight. We're joined this evening by members of the National Press Club Board of Governors, the Board of Directors of the National Press Club Journalism Institute, and our fundraising committee led by Daniel Coffey. We thank them for their stellar service. This evening serves as a fundraiser for the National Press Club Journalism Institute, our nonprofit affiliate that promotes press freedom and professional development, providing journalists with the skills and standards to better inform the public. To share more about the work and impact of the National Press Club Journalism Institute and to present our first award, Please welcome Gil Klein, President of the National Press Club Journalism Institute and Resident Director of the University of Oklahoma's Washington Journalism Program.
Thank you, Eileen. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. As Eileen said, this is a very important night for the National Press Club and the Journalism Institute. We are thrilled that you're here to share it in this extra special night, celebrating journalism excellence on our 50th anniversary of the Fourth Estate, and it's Giving Tuesday. Hey! In an unprecedented year for this country, the Institute took great steps to serve as many journalists as possible with what they need, when they need it. With a new executive director and staff, we've grown the Institute's reach to more than 9,000 individuals through online training programs, our daily journalism newsletter, and conversations that offer career support and skill building. The Institute is focusing attention on the parts of our community traditionally underserved by newsrooms. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to our programs and reflected in our topics and teachers. And we're committed with the National Press Club to removing press freedom barriers affecting journalists in the U.S. and around the globe. Thank you. We are also committed to helping the journalists of tomorrow. Each year, the Institute awards more than $25,000 in scholarships to help students who are passionate about a career in journalism and serving their communities. It takes a vision and your financial support to create meaningful learning opportunities and support to journalists at all stages in their careers. A big thank you to our supporters, including Jackie Lewis, and her WISH organization, who has been championing these initiatives with the Institute. We'll hope that you will continue the Institute's important work by making a donation tonight. And it's a night to do so because, hey, it's Giving Tuesday. So you can go to thepressclubinstitute.org and click Donate. We are also sending you an email right now with the link to donate. Bing! Or you can scan the QR code in the middle of your table. Your support will help us continue our important work serving journalists across the United States and around the globe. And now it's my honor to present our first award. For the 6th year, we are presenting an award that recognizes outstanding investigative reporting, the Neil and Susan Sheehan Award for investigative journalism. It is named for the legendary New York Times reporter and his wife, Susan, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and staff writer at The New Yorker. Ralph and Marianne Krauss created the award to honor Sheehan and their extraordinary commitment to the principle that a vibrant democracy depends on an informed citizenry and a free press. And now this year's honoree, Catrice Cat Stafford. Okay, let's hear it for She is now the global race and justice editor at Reuters and a former investigative reporter for the Associated Press. Kat's impressive investigative portfolio shines a constant light on the oppressive inequities affecting underrepresented communities in America through the lens of politics, government, health, and environmental justice. Among her journalistic work this year, she led, reported, and published a series for the Associated Press exploring how the legacy of racism in America has laid the foundation for health inequities Black people face from birth to death. Her dedication to covering large issues with a local lens has exposed many gaps and much room for the improvement in areas she has covered. We are proud to present Ms. Stafford with this year's Sheehan Award, and now let's welcome her to the stage. for put up in the office.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. I want to start by thanking the National Press Club for this incredible honor, named after two journalists whose work and commitment to investigative journalism serves as a guiding light for us all. I also want to thank my family for their unwavering support throughout my career, including my amazing sister who is here tonight, and my husband and our family who are watching at home. People often ask why I became a journalist. My journalism journey began decades ago in Detroit with my father, who ran our neighborhood block club at the time. He paid close attention to news coverage and decisions that impacted our neighborhood, which had been affected by decades of inequities and the enduring legacy of structural racism, struggles that continue today. We often visited a nearby printing plant where our community newsletters were made. I loved feeling the glossy pages in my hand, but I was mesmerized by the photos and the write-ups that captured the richness and fabric of our community. But that newsletter was in part born out of frustration. My parents grew up in a segregated America, where unequal access to housing, education, healthcare, economic opportunities was profound. They felt news coverage didn't fully reflect our community's experiences. So the neighborhood launched a newsletter to stay informed of its challenges, but also the beauty of living in one of the nation's largest Black majority cities. The newsletter no longer exists, but it was life-changing for me. It planted a seed of hope and a dream I've been able to realize. From a very young age, I wanted to become a journalist, one who reported stories for communities that look like mine, not just about them. There's a difference. I stand before you today on the shoulders of journalism pioneers who embodied this lens of journalism. Journalists like Ida B. Wells, an investigative journalist whose groundbreaking reporting uncovered the horrific lynchings of Black men. Her fearless journalism continues to inspire many today. She once said, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." I became an investigative journalist just to do that, to shed light on wrongdoing, report the truth. But at the heart of that, it has meant intentionally amplifying the voices of communities and people who have long been underserved and historically excluded by our government, institutions, political leaders, and by our very own industry. I've spent my career reporting on the impact of structural racism, but at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, it became very clear that communities of color were being disparately impacted. I found myself wondering how we got to this point in our nation where even amid a global pandemic that devastated everyone across the world, stark inequities still managed to emerge. I set out to answer that question with my project From Birth to Death, which investigated how and why generations of Black Americans have endured health inequities from our first breath of life until our last. We interviewed dozens of experts, doctors, families, historians, political leaders, scoured decades of old newspaper clippings and analyzed data, which allowed us to make bold, fact-based statements about how the legacy of slavery helped lay the foundation for health inequities Black Americans continue to face today. That project, though, was made possible because of the University of Michigan's Knight Wallace Fellowship. Lynette Clementson, the director of the Wallace House Center for Journalists, and Robert Yoon, the former associate director of Wallace House, supported my ambitious idea to travel across the country to tell stories through the eyes of 5 communities and families. They're both here tonight. Thank you. They are the embodiment of what it means to truly invest in the next generation of journalists in equitable and reflective investigative journalism. Thank you, Lynette and Robert, and the entire Wallace House staff for creating a safe space and a transformative experience. It was also possible because of my former AP colleagues and editors, including Andel Gross, Ron Nixon, and Anna Jo Bratton, and many others who brought such an incredible level of dedication, support, and grace to our storytelling. This project was special because it was led by 4 women of color: Noreen Nasser, Mei E. Wong, Annie Ma, and myself. This award also honors the families who entrusted us to share their stories. They recounted traumatic and heartbreaking experiences that they endure via our nation's healthcare system and other institutions. I'm proud we also captured their joy, though, what it means to be a family, sisterhood, and Black fatherhood. Upon publication, the families said they felt seen, heard in a way that they didn't think was possible for someone who looked like them. I think often of Melanie's Mark Thomas, whose husband, Charles Thomas, died of COVID complications in 2021. She wanted the world to know her husband was more than just a COVID statistic. She implored us to show the depth of his humanity, the complexities of what it meant to be a Black man in America. When the project published, she said, quote, "You make me feel safe to tell my story, my husband's story, my family and community story." For me, that's what journalism is about. As the global race and justice editor at Reuters, I'm amazed every day by our global footprint of more than 2,500 journalists located in 200 locations around the world. Their commitment to reporting the truth and Reuters' dedication to making sure our coverage reflects the world around us is inspiring and more important than ever. But I'm also inspired by Mary Ann Shadd Curry, who in the 1800s became the first Black female newspaper publisher in North America. She once said, "To colored women, we have a word. We have broken the editorial ice for your class in America. So go to editing, as many of you as are willing and able." I thought of her message today, and as I stepped into newsroom leadership, I was reminded how important it is to not just have a seat at the table, but to be firmly at the highest heights of newsroom leadership. But my path into this field, specifically investigative journalism, was not easy. There was a point in time where I wasn't quite sure whether there was even a place for someone like me to do this work. It remains, unfortunately, all too rare to see Black investigative journalists in many of our legacy newsrooms. Yet along the way, I have had many mentors and editors who took the time to invest in me. I've tried to pay that forward by mentoring younger journalists who will carry the journalism baton onward. I want to end by urging everyone to think about what your newsroom looks like. What opportunities have you created for journalists of color and those from other underrepresented communities? Who gets the prime beats in your newsroom? Who encompasses your international teams? Who makes the decisions of what gets covered and whose voices and perspectives are amplified? Does your newsroom reflect the nation, the world, or the community that you're tasked with covering? There is no pipeline issue from underrepresented communities. Thank you. All they need, all we need, is opportunity, investment, mentorship, a defined pathway to be welcomed into newsrooms where their perspectives and expertise are valued, not brushed aside or questioned. We are living in unprecedented times right now where our journalism is being questioned, where journalists are being targeted, jailed, killed for simply reporting the truth. We must usher in the next generation of journalists who can continue our work and reflect the world around us, and support those who are here now and honor the memory of those we've lost. So I'm focused on my next dream now, which is leaving the industry hopefully in a much better place, reflective and equitable than when I entered. I want that next little girl from Detroit and beyond to see us, this room, our profession, and never have to question whether she has a place in it. I want her to know she too belongs and that her lived experiences, perspectives, and talent are absolutely vital to the future of our industry. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kat, and thank you so much for those very inspiring and words that we all should consider and act upon. So, thank you. Now, I'd like to take a moment to express our thanks to tonight's sponsors, whose support makes our work possible. You've seen their logos on display around the press club tonight. They are our gold sponsors, Al Jazeera, Bloomberg, NBC News, and the Wall Street Journal. Our silver sponsors, Jack and Elaine Drake, Robert Hastings and Associates, and the Washington Post. Our bronze sponsors, Toyota. Our spirit sponsors, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, and responsibility.org. So, those two. Both important. And our patron sponsors, Addis Communications, Ballard's Bar, Bell Flight, CBS News, CNN, Craig Newmark, Eileen and Carrie O'Reilly, the Gannett USA Today Network, General Dynamics Corporation, the Global Situation Room, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, the New York Times, Scripps News, Syngenta, Trib Total Media, the Volunteers of America, and the News Media Alliance. Thank you to our sponsors who, through their support of this event, have helped the National Press Club Journalism Institute raise a large portion of its operating expenses. What we do would not be possible without this support, so thank you. Now please enjoy this delicious dinner and drinks. The dinner is prepared by Executive Chef Mo Aguilera and our fantastic catering team here, so enjoy. Thank you. Oh, also, don't forget, if you want to make a donation to support the Institute, there's a QR code at the center of your table. Thanks. Hello. It was great to talk to so many of you. Keep talking and keep eating. I hope everyone is enjoying the delicious meal. The National Press Club and the Journalism Institute work year-round to advance press freedom, as you know. We do a lot behind the scenes, but among our activities is that we join Friends of the Court briefs to protect journalists' legal rights. We partner with press freedom colleagues around the world to advocate for journalists' safety and freedom. That has included work on behalf of 2017 Aubuchon honoree, Emilio Gutierrez Soto, who legally sought refuge in the U.S. from Mexico 15 years ago after he and his family received death threats related to his reporting. For 15 years, Emilio faced deportation while fighting a legal battle for asylum. With the weight of the National Press Club, Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, and other press freedom advocates behind him. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome Emilio back to the National Press Club and share that after 15 long years, the Board of Immigration Appeals has ruled that he is eligible for asylum. I know, so exciting. We'd like to ask our friend Emilio and all of those present who assisted in his case, please rise so we may celebrate you and your press freedom win. Thank you. It's nice to have a win, for sure. The club has also tirelessly worked to bring attention to the case of journalist Austin Tice, who was kidnapped while reporting in Syria back in 2012. He freelanced for a variety of news organizations, including the Washington Post and McClatchy. He's a Texan, a veteran U.S. Marine Corps officer, and a law school student at Georgetown University. He's now been held captive for more than 11 years. The National Press Club works with Austin's parents, Deborah and Mark Tice, to keep him in the spotlight and to do everything within our power to bring him home safely and soon. Tonight, we salute Austin and his family watching from Houston, and we hope that next year he will join us personally at this event. And we welcome the families of journalist Evan Gershkovich, and also Alsu Kermasheva. Both of whom are being unjustly held in detainment by Russia. While these journalists suffer needlessly in cold cells with limited communication and support, their families also suffer. We at the National Press Club and the Journalism Institute are with you and behind you to bring them home. Journalism is not a crime. Let's all say that together. Journalism is not a crime. Thank you. Now it's time to honor this year's John Aubuchon Awards. The award is named for a past National Press Club president who had a keen interest in press freedom. Each year, a domestic honoree and an international honoree are selected. These new Aubuchon honorees join the ranks of Maria Ressa, Jason Rezaian, Austin Tice, Maria Colvin, Jamal Khashoggi, Emilio Gutierrez Soto, Danny Fenster, Hayes Fan, and last year's Josh Renaud and Rana Ayoub. This year, we are recognizing 2 Iranian women journalists, Niloofar Hamedi and Elaheh Mohammadi, as the 2023 International Honorees for the John Aubuchon Award. This has been a year of momentous struggle for press freedom in Iran. As many as 90 journalists were arrested during the protests that followed the murder of Mahsa Amini by the Iranian morality police. These honorees created some of the journalism that told Mahsa's story and captured the hearts of protesters, especially Iranian women. Niloofar gained access to the hospital where Mahsa was taken after being beaten and took a photo of Mahsa's parents hugging and crying. The photo went viral. She was arrested just days later. Elaheh was arrested for her coverage of Mahsa's funeral and the unrest around it. After being detained for 13 months, both women were sentenced in October to more than 12 years in prison for what we know to be false charges of national security conspiracy and collaborating with the United States. Accepting on their behalf is Jason Rezaian.
Thank you very much, Eileen, and everybody at the National Press Club. It's always good to come home. As I told Evan's parents, this isn't an award that people want to receive. It means that you're locked up somewhere far away. But it also, the news gets to you and lifts your spirits. So I hope that Elaheh and Niloofar and Evan and also and Austin and others who are imprisoned around the world hear us here tonight. The courage and tenacity that these 2 journalists displayed in the face of a state that not only stifles all forms of expression, but does everything in its power to suppress women is truly awe-inspiring. And sadly, they can't be here to accept this award themselves because after more than 14 months, they remain locked up in Tehran's Evin prison. That's the same prison that my wife and Yegi and I were held in. It's exactly where I was 8 years ago when I received the Aubuchon Award. Elaheh and Niloofar are behind bars because they have supposedly been convicted of a variety of national security crimes. But the truth is, they're in prison because they dared to tell the truth. They told a story that they believed had to be told about Mahsa Amini, the young woman who died in state custody because Iran's so-called morality police decided that she had not properly covered her hair. Let that sink in for a second. I mean, that's a crime worthy of death in police custody in the Islamic Republic today. As Eileen mentioned, Niloofar broke that news, and Elaheh traveled to Mahsa's hometown to report on her funeral and the outpouring of anger and grief that followed her death. Their journalism, though, it sparked a movement that continues today. But it also led to an ongoing crackdown of journalists that has made Iran the world's #1 jailer of journalists. Yegi, my wife, who can't be with us tonight, is the senior Middle East researcher at the Committee to Protect Journalists, and she has documented actually over 100 journalist arrests since the protests started in September of 2022. And those are just the ones we know about. There are surely many, many more. like Elaheh and Niloofar, they have risked everything: their safety, security, families, and in a lot of cases, their homeland, to ensure the world knows the name Mahsa Amini and the millions of Iranians who protested in search of justice. This award is also for them. And it's for the brave women of Iran who have been fighting for their rights for decades and are inspired anew every time their struggle is highlighted out in the world, as it is being done here tonight. Zan, Zendagi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason, for those powerful remarks, a reminder of what is at stake when press freedom is oppressed. Tonight, we recognize another journalist who demonstrated dedication and courage while reporting from Russia during a period of dramatically increased danger for journalists. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, the club's domestic Aubuchon honoree. Let's take a look at this video.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is right now in Russian custody.
The U.S. State Department formally declared Evan Gershkovich, quote, wrongfully detained.
Americans should be deeply concerned about what's happening.
100 days in Russian captivity.
This was the cover of the Wall Street Journal today.
His family is asking for a global effort to get him home.
There's no evidence for the charges.
His colleagues at the Journal are promoting the hashtag #IStandWithEvan across social media.
Nothing that might even be taken as a sign of dissent is allowed in Russia right now.
Well, it was obviously very disturbing to see Evan in a glass cage just for doing his job, just for reporting.
Evan is an all-American boy.
Happy birthday to you.
Very, very curious from early age.
He always had questions about everything.
He's kind of born to be a reporter.
I know that he felt like it was his duty to report.
We condemn the detention of Mr. Gershkovich in the strongest terms.
Evan went to report in Russia to shed light on the darkness.
Evan's incarceration is an assault on free press.
Evan was doing what reporters do.
We have missed his reporting and authoritative insights into Russia at such a crucial time.
Evan is innocent.
If this can happen to my brother, it can happen to any journalist.
Our message to Evan is this: keep the faith. We won't stop until you are home.
I rely on President Biden's promise to do whatever it takes to bring Evan back.
In a wartime environment filled with risks, Evan consistently delivered honest, bold, and enlightening news coverage. Evan was detained in March on false espionage charges during a reporting trip in Russia. Journalism is not a crime, and Evan should not be jailed for his profession, which is why we honor him for it today. Tonight, we are joined by Evan's family and his Wall Street Journal colleagues. I'd like to invite Paul Beckett, assistant editor at Wall Street Journal, and Evan's mother, father, and sister to accept the 2023 Aubuchon Award for Press Freedom on his behalf.
Thank you so much for honoring Evan with the John Aubuchon Press Freedom Award. Before Evan's arrest, I didn't have much understanding of the journalist community he was part of. I knew about his dedication to his dream job as a Russia correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, his drive to find the next story, even on his supposed days off, and his remarkable talent. However, these past 8 months have been a revelation. Every day, I'm struck by the incredible courage and unrelenting determination of journalists to deliver the unbiased truth to the public. As Evan remains in prison, we are continually amazed by the solidarity shown by news organizations and journalists worldwide for one of their own. My family and I are profoundly grateful for the support extended by the National Press Club. Each individual within these walls has lent a hand to families like ours, thrust unexpectedly into the public eye. I would especially like to thank Bill McCarran, whose unmeasurable kindness and belief in Evan's eventual release inspires us every day. The National Press Club's relentless efforts reassure us that they will persist until every unjustly imprisoned journalist is reunited with their loved ones. From the depths of our hearts, we extend our gratitude for steadfastly advocating for Evan and ensuring his story remains in the public's awareness. Your support has been an anchor for us during one of the most challenging periods of our lives. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to the U.S. government for its efforts to date, and we're looking forward to those efforts showing results as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of tonight's honorees. This has been a long and difficult 8 months for Evan, for his family, the Journal, and supporters of press freedom everywhere. And this morning, a Moscow court extended Evan's detention to at least January 30th, which means that a difficult 8 months will be at least a difficult 10 months, and soon enough, 1 year. But it has been leavened by events like this, when we are reminded of the many rays of light that have penetrated the gloom. And I would like to highlight some of those tonight. First and foremost, I would like to say how remarkable the Gershkovich family has been since Evan was seized on March 29th. Ella, Mikhail, and Danielle have inspired all of us at the Journal and beyond with their determination, equilibrium, genuineness, and grace. I've never met Evan, but I've heard a lot about him from his friends, and we're honored to have one of his friends here from Moscow tonight. But I can see what his friends describe as his innate curiosity, his quirkiness, his far-reaching interests, his compassion, his grit, his love of a good laugh, all reflected in distinct ways through each member of his family. I feel like I know him by knowing them. And as Evan's family is proud of him, so he can be proud of them. For all they are doing to secure his release, often in ways and places that I know are well outside their comfort zone, such as spending an evening with the combined forces of the Washington Press Corps, for instance. Now, when Evan was unjustly seized, it was a real body blow, not just to the family, but also to the Journal. And at that time, we relied on and were supported by the generosity and comradeship of none other than the National Press Club, where Bill McCarran and Eileen O'Reilly and all of the excellent staff here have been absolute stalwarts in their support. We also had helpful conversations with Jason Rezaian and others at the Washington Post, one of the few institutions that has had to deal with their own wrongful detainment in the past decade. And we benefited greatly from an extraordinary outpouring of support and help from so many other news organizations and press freedom outlets. If people across the world know of Evan and his unlawful arrest, it is thanks to all those organizations including everyone in this room, which took his story seriously, lifted his profile, and brought sustained attention to this outrage. We remain eternally grateful for it all. So when Alsu Kurmasheva of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty was jailed in Russia recently, we sought to be helpful and to pass along some of the knowledge that we have accumulated over the past almost 250 days since Evan's detention. Now, you probably see where I'm going with this. Journalists are being killed, harassed, and seized at an unprecedented rate around the globe. So I'm afraid I'm here to tell you that if it can happen to us, it can happen to any of you. At any time, in an increasing number of places around the world. The poignant little club to which we now belong is surely going to grow in membership. That is a perilous state of affairs for US journalism and its determination to follow the story wherever it leads. But we also now have the opportunity to share the cumulative strategies, lessons, and insights from those of us who have experienced it, and to help others be better prepared if and when this happens. We certainly don't have all the answers. Evan remains behind bars. But collectively, we have some answers to the questions you, as news organizations, will immediately face. Who do we deal with in the US government? And how? What is our colleague likely feeling as he or she sits in jail, largely cut off from the outside world? How do we help that colleague's family and friends? How do we maintain and broaden support as the weeks and months drag on? How do we appropriately rally our own staff to the cause? How do we write about our own newsrooms? Who might be helpful in Congress? How do we approach third countries to help? And finally, how can we all encourage the US government and other nations to find creative ways to deter autocratic regimes from doing this to our reporters, to break the cycle of unlawful seizures and unsavory exchanges? If we can collectively find an answer to that last one, it will ensure that the vital information that we rely on from foreign correspondents keeps flowing. It will ensure our staff are protected, and it will reinforce the freedom of the press that underpins our free society. In an increasingly dangerous world, it is all a very daunting challenge. The good news, based on our experience of the last 8 months, is that help is out there. We stand ready to offer that help to whoever may need it. And as Evan approaches a new year falsely imprisoned, I hope we can continue to rely on your help too in shining a light on this atrocity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul and Danielle. We are proud to honor and put the weight of the National Press Club and the Journalism Institute behind these brave journalists as our Aubuchon Press Freedom honorees. We thank you and your supporters for your ongoing commitment to press freedom. Now it is my privilege to bestow our 2023 National Press Club 4th Estate Award upon an amazing trailblazer in our profession, and one I know who will report on this issue, Kristen Welker. Kristen Welker came to our mind immediately when considering our many esteemed colleagues out there for this award. Kristen is the 13th moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, the longest-running show on television. She's the second woman to moderate the program and the first Black journalist to moderate a Sunday public affairs broadcast. And she's had a long and storied career before her current post. She's covered multiple administrations as a White House correspondent, co-anchored Weekend Today for many years, and hosted the final debate for the 2020 presidential election between then President Donald Trump and his challenger Joe Biden. And we all recall the political pundits who named the winner of that debate as Kristen. I've admired Kristen for a while, but do not know her well personally, so I did a little homework and spoke to our mutual friend and my Axios colleague, Margaret Talish, who says Kristen has a producer's ethic of going the extra mile in unsung ways to support her colleagues or the show. She also mentioned the classic Welker refrain of, "That's amazing." Oh, sorry, that's amazing. And pointed out that it captures pretty much everything you need to know about Kristen, from having great news judgment and tenacity in her questioning, to empathizing with humor and humanity, to being relentlessly optimistic and driven, and just being an amazing all-around woman from Philly who is a leader in her field and an inspiration to all of us. Now let us take a deeper look at Kristen's career.
Traveling with the president in Cartagena, Colombia, in Yangon, Myanmar, in Brisbane, in Mexico City, in Beijing. Kristen Welker, NBC News.
Kristen is the quintessential journalist. She's fair, she wants to get to the truth, she knows there's always more than one side to the story.
She is relentless, she is passionate, she is fiercely committed to getting things right.
Is that your signature on the check, though?
Yes, that's my check.
She's got a tenaciousness about her that is exemplary and is, to me, how a good journalist should comport themselves.
Her thirst for facts and respect for both the viewers and those she covers really embody the ideals that we all aspire to as journalists.
Do you acknowledge that both Israeli intelligence officials and U.S. intelligence officials were caught off guard here?
This is an attack that I don't think anyone saw coming.
I never see her come to work doing less than 100%, frankly 150%, to the point where a lot of us have to look around and say, we got to stop Kristen. She just keeps going.
She exemplifies what it is to be an outstanding journalist, a terrific member of the news media community here in Washington, D.C. She is not just a mentor to so many. To me personally, she is a dear friend and a fantastic colleague.
I could not be more thrilled to welcome one of my best friends, my White House colleague, Kristen Welker.
When I first met Kristen, she'd come to us from the LA Bureau, and she was filling in for us at the White House. And to see her grow and mature as a journalist has just been an amazing thing to see.
I'll never forget the first time we were White House correspondent colleagues together. I was already in the windowless booth when Kristen Welker came blowing in like a storm of energy, and in that moment I nicknamed her Welknado.
We are It's a little windy out here. Kristen preps for big interviews, big shows, big press conferences harder than anyone I have ever seen.
You sit down with Kristen in a one-on-one interview, you will know you've been interviewed.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure.
I'm glad that we were colleagues and only one of us was going into a news conference, because there was nobody who would be better prepared.
Kristen Welker.
Don't you need to recalibrate to some extent?
She holds those in power to account, but always to the benefit of her audience.
Do you bear any responsibility for missing the attack?
After the war, there'll be a thorough investigation, and everybody will have to answer some very tough questions, including myself.
A good journalist is motivated by the facts, getting to the truth, setting the record straight, and never being afraid to ask a tough question. Who better embodies that than Kristen Welker, covering former Presidents Obama and Trump, President Biden these days, and now is the moderator of Meet the Press.
U.S., Israeli, and Hamas negotiators are closing in on a deal to release some of the nearly 240 hostages held in Gaza
Kristen, at this point in time, was the obvious choice for being the moderator of Meet the Press, in part because she is relentless. She's going to work day and night to bring the reporting to her audience.
What keeps you going? Do you ever feel defeated?
I have a lot of power.
I was lucky enough to be on Kristen's team when she moderated the presidential debate in Nashville.
I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate.
I felt like I was going to throw up when she walked alone onto that stage. It was just an incredibly intense moment. But she was so firmly in control.
Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical.
Working with Kristen on anything is always a joy, but it was an especially rewarding time preparing with her for the recent Republican presidential primary debate.
You owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time at least condemn.
Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions.
Nothing gets handed to you. You have to work at it. And she is one of those that takes that mantra to the next level. You're not going to outwork her. But you should try to emulate it.
In September, we asked the same question, and it was 41-53.
These numbers surprised our own pollsters.
One of the things that makes Kristen special is as hard as she works and as much as she loves NBC News and covering Washington, she loves her family just as much.
Kristen, John, Margot are some of the best things that happened to me and my family, our family as I view it. I call Kristen my big little sister because she's a month older than me, but I still view her as my kid's sister, and I love her to death.
It's just like Peter in the 1980s.
Can I just say? One of the things that I've always noticed about Kristen is that she always uses a word to describe things a lot. She'll always say, "It was amazing." I think that speaks a lot to how Kristen sees life. It is amazing, and I think that's what we think about her. She's amazing.
Here to tell us more about Kristen is Ken Strickland, NBC News Senior Vice President and Washington Bureau Chief. Ken manages the day-to-day operation of the Bureau and oversees all aspects of the network's news coverage from DC, so he's very familiar with Kristen's work as her colleague for more than 10 years. Ken, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Before I tell you a little bit more about Kristen, I want to say something directly to Kristen, which is this. Kristen, I am happy for you, I'm impressed by you, and I am proud of you. And now I'm going to tell a room full of people why. Why am I happy for you? Kristen is living her journalism dream. It started before she even got her first real job in journalism at the Today Show as an intern. Years later, she's the co-host of Weekend Today. Kristen came to me about 11 years ago from the LA Bureau after doing some time in local news, and she came into my office with two things, passion and determination. She was helping us out at the White House on weekends, and she said, "I want to be a White House correspondent." She's a White House correspondent. Not only was she a White House correspondent, she and Peter shared the title of our chief co-White House correspondents. What role model you set for young women, for people of color, for journalists all over the world that dreams do come true. Kristen, I'm also impressed by you. And much of it was revealed on that tape. Nobody works harder. And I think it's worth repeating some of the things that people said. You're relentless, fiercely committed to getting it right. She's tenacious, she thirsts for the facts, respect for both the viewer and the person she's interviewing. Never comes to work doing less than 100%. Who does that? Every day. Never afraid to ask the tough questions. A little Kristen story about her work ethic. So we talked about the debate she did in 2020. Kristen was also the White House correspondent at that time, so Chloe and I are thinking she really shouldn't She shouldn't do the White House. She should get ready for the debate. We had to convince, I can do both. I said, Kristen, really, I can do it. We had to, a couple of times, encourage her, take some time, get ready for the debate. I think it worked out well for you. And now, of course, she's the moderator of Meet the Press, and my colleague and my boss, Rebecca Blumenstein, will talk more about that in a second. But also, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you not just because of your work ethic, but how you've carried yourself throughout this journey with humility. That means a lot in this town. Not a lot of it around in this town. You're a role model. You're a mentor. You're a first-rate colleague. You're the best team player. During this extraordinary journey, you also created your own personal news. You found John and your life mate. And together, you have Margot. I want to correct something I said earlier on that tape, which is, as much as she loves NBC, she loves her family much more. And it shows. And I have two sources for that. One is Margot and one is John, in case there's any source approval that needs to be done in NBC. The other thing I want to say about Kristen, which is really important, is when you have the opportunities and the responsibilities that Kristen has, whether she has the title or not, she is a leader in our organization. And I remember the day that she and Peter became co-chief White House correspondents, and Kristen came into my office and said, I want a culture for our team that represents what the best of journalism and what the best of NBC is. Inclusive, people having a voice and a seat at the table, and that really speaks to a lot about who she is. So I am happy for you, I am impressed by you, and I am so proud of you, and congratulations for this award.
Ooh, thank you, Ken. You're tall. Now join me in welcoming Rebecca Blumenstein, President of Editorial for NBC News. Rebecca drives journalism and original content across the organization's broadcast and digital platforms. She oversees NBC News editorial teams, including news gathering, field operations, bookings, Meet the Press, Dateline NBC, and NBC News Studios. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you so much, Eileen, and thank you so much, Ken, for your leadership and the tremendous way that you run this Washington Bureau, and to so many of my colleagues here from NBC News Washington. I also just want to take a moment. I worked at the Wall Street Journal for 21 years, and I want to thank the family of Evan Gershkovich and my former colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, Paul, and the entire team. You have just been a model of courage and resilience, and Evan and the many journalists who were wrongly imprisoned are just a model of the highest ideals of journalism and the risks facing all of us, and they're truly an inspiration to us all. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I am thrilled to be here tonight to honor Kristen Welker. Kristen is what I call a reporter's reporter. She has a relentlessly inquisitive mind and spent years as a beat reporter in many places around the country before she came to Washington, which makes her such a great reporter here. Kristen, you've never forgotten your local roots, you're Philly proud, and you're always focused on what's top of mind for voters, which is a true north for you and really is a great guide for you and our coverage. As you've heard, Kristen is a relentless worker, but she's also a relentless collaborator. She's the one who's up at 5 in the morning, many mornings, and this is even before Margot entered the picture, I would say. And whether it's in DC or China or anywhere in the world, she's often up with Andrea and Carol Lee, Peter Alexander, just confirming that last detail for a story. And she gets the most thrill out of doing it when it's not even her story, but it's someone else's story. And Kristen, you've taken that spirit into the moderator's chair of Meet the Press. I was speaking to David Gala, the executive producer of Meet the Press, and it's unbelievable that you've had this job for only 2 months. So much has happened on top of a debate, and you are exemplifying and what is so natural to Meet the Press and the leader of this very, very important show. And you know that you're not just putting on a show for TV every week. You were one of the very first faces people see representing the journalism of NBC News. And you take that to heart. Every week you are bringing new reporting to the broadcast every Sunday, and you treat every conversation the same way as if it were almost off camera. Respectful, fair, and not taking no for an answer. And I want to pause on the not taking no for an answer, because I think this is becoming a traditional, like a really trademark Welker trait. Carrie Budoff-Brown, our SVP for politics, and I were chatting the other day, and we were just cracking up because we know when you are not going to move off topic. And I don't want to give away anything, any tricks here, but you politely say to your subject, let's be clear. Let me ask that again. Or just so we can be clear for the audience. And as Carrie said the other day, you do it very politely. You kind of put them on notice, but you let them know that you are not going to let them get away with just sticking to talking points. You're polite, but that doesn't prevent you from asking a question 2, 3, or 4 times sometimes. But you also know when to hold back. We had a debate earlier this month, and you may remember, as it was shown in the video, that one of the presidential candidates actually started out in his opening remarks attacking you. But you didn't fall for the bait. You stayed calm and delivered a line, as you saw, that I believe became one of the more memorable lines of the debate. We ask the questions. We live in an era where there has never been more of a premium on original journalism that illuminates and informs. Overcoming the deep partisanship and division in American politics is perhaps the Fourth Estate's biggest challenge. As Kristen is already showing, you know how to bring people together and get them talking, which is a crucial step in bridging that divide. Congratulations, Kristen, on this incredibly well-deserved honor.
Thanks, Rebecca. Kristen, tonight we are honored to present you with the 2023 Fourth Estate Award. You are in good company. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2023 honoree, Kristen Welker of the NBC News.
Oh my goodness, this is so overwhelming. Eileen, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Thank you to the National Press Club for this extraordinary recognition. I promised myself I wasn't going to get emotional, and yet I was sitting there holding in tears and sometimes not doing a very good job. I am completely overwhelmed and blown away. Rebecca and Ken, I don't know how to thank you enough for your beautiful words and your beautiful introduction. It's just completely overwhelming. Thank you. And just seeing all of these faces is to some extent like a reunion. Seeing so many folks who I worked with at the White House and beyond, it's really incredible. I also want to thank Caesar, Carrie, Rashida, who's here tonight, Chloe, for your leadership of NBC News and the DC Bureau, and for your belief in me and the work that I do. I'm truly grateful for your support through incredible moments like this one, and sometimes very challenging ones, like the debate where I also thought I might throw up, but fortunately we didn't. A huge thanks to David Gellis, who is the executive producer of Meet the Press and my partner in this extraordinary journey. And to all of my NBC News colleagues who are here tonight, Peter Alexander, Andrea Mitchell, Carol Lee, to name just a few, you are like my family. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your beautiful words in that video. I remember when the great Andrea Mitchell received this same recognition several years ago, and I just sat in the audience in awe of her and this, and of the National Press Club, and so it is just so humbling to be here. I also want to thank Chuck Todd, who of course had the confidence to pass the baton to me. He is not here tonight, but we talk all of the time, and he continues to be such an incredible presence in my life. My parents, I am so blessed to say, Harvey and Julie Welker, are here. They, of course, are from Philadelphia, where I was raised. Thank you for making me every bit of who I am. I would not be on this stage if it weren't for the two of you. So thank you. To John and my beautiful Margot, I couldn't do what I do without their love and support. John, unfortunately, has a work meeting. He's in Florida, but he is watching. So John, I love you. Margot, I love you to the end of the earth, and hopefully you are asleep right now. What an incredible and astonishing legacy to be a part of. I have this tremendous honor of accepting the Fourth Estate Award on its 50th anniversary, so I want to just say a huge congratulations to the National Press Club on such an exciting milestone, and to all of the honorees tonight. But I want to dedicate this award to my countless fellow reporters who cannot be here tonight. We've been talking about them throughout the evening, those covering the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, and especially those who are targeted and persecuted for their work. They are reminders of why we do what we do, and that in too many places around the globe, fighting for a free press is still dangerous and sometimes deadly. So tonight, and every night, we keep Evan, Austin, Alsu in our minds, in our hearts. We will not rest until they are home. And we are so honored that you can be here tonight. And please know that you are always in our thoughts. This 50-year milestone and becoming a part of this legacy is a reminder to me of our collective responsibility to uphold the values of this treasured award. And tonight I want to talk about the importance of using our journalism to shine a light on the hard realities that we are collectively facing right now. And so many of the speakers tonight have talked about the importance of shining that light. We are confronting a crisis of trust in our institutions, in government, and yes, in media as well. And so it has never been more important to revitalize the spirit of the Fourth Estate, to hold those in power to account and those who seek positions of power to account for their words and their actions, to respect our readers, our viewers, our listeners enough to know that we don't need to shield them from the complexities of the world in which we live. This moment has made me reflect on why I wanted to be a journalist in the first place. And the truth is, I've always wanted to be a journalist for as long as I can remember. But my desire to join the ranks of political journalism was crystallized in 1991 when my mom, Julie Welker, ran for city council in Philadelphia. My dad was her top advisor. What I learned from this experience taught me a lot about the importance of good journalism. Not unlike our politics today, there were some rough and tumble moments in that race, including when one radio talk show host asked my mom to justify being in an interracial marriage. It was a question that may have been of some interest to some of the voters at the time, but in my mind, I thought it probably did little to help illuminate for voters my mom's plans to improve the 5th district where we lived. It was then that I started to understand the power and importance of responsible journalism. It made me ask myself some hard questions. Who was asking the questions? Whose interests were they serving? Were the questions helping to educate voters or merely creating titillating headlines? I think we're facing a similar dynamic right now, and we are also facing a critical challenge. How do we, as journalists, speak to the entire country when right now so much of the country has stopped talking to each other and worse, stopped listening? Do we shout each other down? Do we simply talk over one another? Or do we try to create settings that invite people back to the table to have constructive conversations where all ideas are examined in the light of scrutiny? I think one of the ways that we as journalists can confront the moment we're in is by seeking conversations with unique and diverse perspectives that people won't hear anywhere else. If we can bring people with different views to the same table, I believe we can begin to sew back together these threads of division. One of my biggest goals, and quite frankly, one of my biggest challenges as the moderator of Meet the Press, is to facilitate exactly these kinds of conversations. And that starts with incorporating more voices into our coverage. That means including, of course, elected officials and candidates from all across the political spectrum, but also including the voices of voters, as well as cultural leaders, academics, scientists, entertainers, and more. People who can lend new perspectives to the issues that impact our politics and in many cases grind them to a halt. That's why we have begun featuring interviews with people like actress and disability rights advocate Selma Blair, who appeared on Meet the Press this past Sunday. Blair is using her powerful and her brave voice to speak out about her experience living with multiple sclerosis. And she is calling for better treatment and fair pay for the disabled community. It is my hope that by listening to new perspectives on issues that are often overlooked, we can help foster better conversations with lawmakers and public officials and policymakers, but also, most importantly, at dinner tables and workplaces and every other venue for discourse all around this country. From Main Street to Capitol Hill, it's truly our mission and our duty to try to restart those conversations. I don't have to tell anyone in this room we're about to turn the calendar again into another consequential election year. An election year that will be defined, perhaps like no other, by our political and cultural divides. As we consider our role and our responsibility as journalists this coming year, we are so equipped, perhaps better than anyone, to give our audiences what they need to make good decisions. But telling people how to think or what to think has never been a part of that role, and it isn't today either. The viewpoints of our elected officials and of those who are seeking higher office matter. Those perspectives are critical to helping voters make their decisions, and holding these officials to account is the very core of our democracy. At this critical moment, we cannot afford to stick our heads in the sand. We must have the courage to hold a mirror up to ourselves as a society and to always ask the hard questions about who we are and how we got to this moment. And furthermore, we have to trust our audience that they will have the tools and the capacity to make decisions if we do our jobs well. If we do not trust in our audiences, how will we ever help repair their faith in us? A lot of the incredible journalists gathered here tonight and across the country probably share one thing in common: the realization long ago that we were never going to win a popularity contest in this role. Rather, we are here to participate in the hard work of uncovering the truth as best as we can for the people we serve. This is why the Fourth Estate Award and the work of the National Press Club is so vitally important, to remind ourselves that journalists are meant to be one of democracy's shining pillars. I am so immensely privileged to be in this room of outstanding journalists and to consider each one of you colleagues. Thank you so very much for this honor. Thank you to the countless journalists in this room and all around the world who stand up for the principles of this award every single day. I share this recognition and responsibility with every one of you. And I want to leave you with the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said in 1963, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So tonight, may we all remain committed to shining that light every single day. Thank you so much. Thank you. I am so humbled and honored by this award.
Thank you, Kristen. So one of the benefits to getting this award, besides that heavy frame, is that you become a National Press Club member. So I hope to see you at the bar.
Thank you, Zoe. You will. You will.
All right, good. Thank you. So once again, Kristen, we welcome you, we congratulate you, and we thank you for inspiring generations of journalists. And congratulations to everyone's tonight's award recipients. And thank you to everyone who gave tonight. And in case you haven't done it yet, don't forget the QR code at your table. But I wanted to extend our thanks to many club and institute staff members and volunteers who made tonight possible and amazing. This brings our program to a close. We invite everyone to continue enjoying your table conversations and network and say hello. We enjoyed being with you. Thank you.